we're committed to, and that's work that we're previewing for you here today. Oh, it's an animated slide. I forgot. Okay, so here's what we think, right? Mission, every child learning every day in our graduate profile skills. We believe that if we are to get there, we need to provide high quality instruction consistently across every single classroom, across every single school in our system. High quality instruction can be interpreted to mean lots of different things. We want to make sure that we have a shared understanding, and we root our high quality instruction in what we call our deeper learning framework. Our deeper learning framework is very much rooted in our graduate profile, but specifically it talks about what does it take to get our students to be critical thinkers, to be leaders, to be engaged learners, and what does that look like in terms of teaching, and what does that look like in terms of learning? We know that in order for us to ground ourselves in anything, in order for us to move towards consistency, we need some guides. And so we are creating instructional guidance that actually shows teachers what and how we should teach at each grade level. So no longer are we just like, you figure it out, but we're saying at this grade level, this is what's essential and important. We also are going to create a number of school models. Again, we're not trying to have a cookie cutter. We want to have some shared base experiences that every student can have. We want to give some schools flexibilities to create models and engage in models that are responsive to that, but are also responsive to the students that they have in front of them in the classroom. We're creating instructional rubrics so that our teachers can know what should daily instruction look like. So it's not just what you teach, but it's how you teach it, and making sure that we have some clear guidance on that as well. And then we're making sure that we align our central office's support so we actually can maximize that in our school system. So that's our professional development, our curriculum development, and how to make sure that everything aligns in service of this instructional framework. So here's the thing. It's easy to say, get coherent and be coherent and do it all. But we want to be honest that this is going to take us some time. And this is just a visual that shows that this is not a quick fix or an overnight thing, that we're really seeing this as a strategic long-term plan that will probably take about 5 years, which actually works well because Vision 2025 is on the horizon. And so we've been kind of chunking this work out across several years, but a lot of work has actually started now. For all the different phases of this work, we have a design phase where we're asking questions, we're doing focus groups, we're looking at research, and we're creating models and rubrics and packages. We have a test phase where we actually try it out in different schools or classrooms and get feedback and iterate on it as necessary. And then we think about how do we align central supports to support that, and ultimately how do we get into the classroom and into our school buildings. And so wanting to make sure that folks hear us say that we believe that we need to be more coherent and consistent across all of our schools and our classrooms. We're doing that work, but it's going to take time before we see the results that we expect to see in terms of experiences and outcomes for our students. Just a little bit about the work that we're already doing to move towards increased instructional coherence. First, I want to reiterate that we've been doing a lot of engagement around this. We've spoken to some parent groups. We've spoken to, the lights just went off. I'm in the iLab, I'm sorry. Okay, can you guys still see me? I'm in the dark now, that's okay. All right, yeah. We've spoken to some parent groups, we've spoken to some principals and teachers just to get their ideas around, do we need to have more instructional coherence? Is there a desire for there? And it is clear that there is that desire, but also to give folks feedback and ideas around what does instructional coherence look like? We've been building a lot of awareness using our citywide meetings and our cohorts with our leaders to start to ground ourselves in deeper learning. We called out 3 instructional shifts at the beginning of this year: acceleration, not remediation, deeper learning, and balanced assessments. And we've even started to do centralized PD, where we are leveraging the early release that all of our schools now have to bring teachers in one space to engage in shared learning and also sharing of best practices and ideas. We're doing a lot of designs. You're going to see a preview of one of our designs in just a minute. We are working on our graduate profile skills. I'm not sure if you all have seen the graduate profile skills and competencies, but they are aplenty. And so we've been working to kind of narrow those down and come up with the power skills, if you will. We've been doing more work on our deeper learning framework, working on rubrics that are used across our TLE, which is our leadership development pathway, as well as our teacher pathway, and actually starting to do some school model prototypes and grade level instructional guidance. We've been, again, piloting some of these things by doing our central PD. That kind of had to halt as we dispatch folks to the schools to support classroom vacancies. But we're excited about the centralized PD that we had started and that we plan to continue just next month. We also have been doing some professional learning communities and engaging our teacher fellows and doing some piloting of some cohort and some rubrics across our different cohorts. We have Devin Krugman here, who is a part of our CNI team, and she was going to preview to you just some of the things, some of the artifacts that we're starting to create for our educators to move us closer to instructional coherence and alignment. Devin?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see you all. My name is Devin Krugman. As was just said, I work in curriculum and instruction, supporting our content, coaching, and teacher pipeline teams. So one of the things I'm going to give an overview on is the design of our grade level guidance. And as was just said earlier in the presentation, we know that for instructional coherence to become a reality, we have to get really specific and really detailed at both the grade level and content area to name for teachers explicitly, what do we hope to come alive? What are our priorities? What does this look like with a kindergartner or a sixth grader or a ninth grader? And so our teams have been working to that end. The other piece is that we know that many of our previous instructional resources and curricula have been designed to serve teachers across a range of experiences, both new and veteran teachers. And one of the things that we wanted to be really intentional about with the design of this grade level guidance is that we're really centering the experience of the brand new teacher at the school with the brand new administrator. And through that lens, we hope to be able to design these grade level guidance websites and documents so that they're accessible for that specific target group, so that even as brand new teachers enter our system, they can get the content, the information, the instructional resources, the curricula they need to know this is how SFUSD does kindergarten or does sixth grade or does high school ELA. So for this grade level guidance, we've actually started by prototyping what it might look like at the kindergarten level. And the grade level guidance is organized around these 4 core areas, which I'll speak to on the next slide and build a connection into instructional observations. But the first area is around culture of learning, which begins with a developmental overview of students at the kindergarten level, because we want that guidance to be student-centered. We want to launch with who are these students as individuals, as 5- and 6-year-olds, and how can we meet their needs as educators. We then go into academic ownership, where we talk about what our deeper learning instructional priorities look like at specifically the kindergarten level. The idea being, yes, kindergartners can engage in inquiry, and here's how you can support them as a teacher to do so, so that we don't wait on these deeper learning skills and graduate profile competencies, and that we really believe students across the pre-K to 12 level can engage in them. We then provide guidance on essential content, which are the highest priority topics for the grade level. We know that all topics are important, but we want to provide this essential content because we know teachers in reality are making instructional decisions around what to drop and where to focus their pacing. And so we want that guidance to be rooted in their real experience. And then for the final section, we're focused on demonstration of learning, which is providing teachers with access to the resources that can help them understand where students are academically and what they can do instructionally to meet their needs. That currently includes our standard-based report card overview, but we will be including some of our other assessment measures, such as portfolios, how to use RI data, and other metrics. So these grade level guidance sites and documents are intentionally organized to be tied to our core rubric, which has these same competencies around things like demonstration of learning and academic ownership. And the goal behind this alignment is to provide one tool, one structure, one set of language for observations, for coaching, for evaluation, and for curriculum and instruction. The idea being, if I'm a teacher and I'm getting feedback on the degree to which I might need to shift my academic ownership, I can go into that grade level guidance and see specifically, okay, this is what it needs to look like at kindergarten. Here's what I might do differently with my next lesson plan or unit plan. We really want to work to streamline our tools so that we do not have a different framework or a different tool or a different lens for every department or every grade level, but one unified experience for teachers, again, to build coherence, as was stated earlier in the presentation.
Thank you, Devin. So we said a little bit and a lot. Again, this is us wanting this to be the first of many opportunities to engage this committee and others in this work. But again, our goal is really to make it clear to the public, to make it clear to you all as commissioners that we have really done a lot of thinking around the each and every and what's getting in our way of accomplishing the each and every, of making sure that each baby realizes their full potential. And we believe it's because we've allowed for a very long time so much variability. Every school does what they want to do, every classes they want to do. And to be clear, there's some amazing things happening in SFUSD that is really benefiting a number of students. However, it's not to scale and it's not sustainable. And so what we have decided and set out to do is to really lift those practices and those systems and structures that have benefited students and move towards a system where each and every student can have access to that quality instruction, that rigorous instruction, that engaging instruction. And we believe in order for that to happen, we have to provide more guidance and more clarity. And so we're thinking, again, as Devin just showed, about rubrics for teachers, about lessons, about coaching, about PD, but not just about those things that happen in the classroom, but how do we leverage every single part of our system to get really clear about what we expect? And then how do we communicate out to teachers, but also to our families so they're really clear on what every student should be receiving and engaging in across every grade level. I literally just jumped from one meeting to this meeting and had to make my brain focus on what I'm focusing on. I promise you the video can say what I just tried to say a lot better. So I do hope that folks take some time later. It's about a 4-minute video and you see my face a lot. I apologize, but it really does speak to the work that we're trying to do, celebrate the work that's already happening in SFUSD and really calling out our commitment to moving towards more coherence and more alignment across our system instructionally in service of the each and every. So that's it. We are now open to questions.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Superintendent Ford Martel. There were 2 extra slides. Did you want to show those, or were they weren't part of the appendix? They were before the appendix, at least on my.
Nope.
No. Okay.
No,
right,
that was the end.
All right, thank you so much, and thank you, Devin, as well. I want to open up to public comment at this time. I also want to acknowledge that Commissioner Bogus has joined us as well. So Deborah, could you see if there's anybody?
Yes, if you'd like to speak to this item, can you please raise your hand and can I have that translated, please?
Por favor, si quieren hablar sobre este tema, levanten la mano para hacer el comentario público. Muchas gracias.
All right.
如果你想對剛才簡報發表公眾發言嘅話，而家請舉手。Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. So I think there's 2 hands, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll give 2 minutes each, and this is for the instructional coherence informational item.
Okay. Nadia? Nadia?
Hi.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, I'm a Latina mom here in San Francisco. My kids have been discriminated because of COVID in their school and sent to home the whole month. I have been staying at home with my kids with no education. This is in San Francisco in a Catholic school, St. Finbar. I have talked to California, San Francisco, and they blame the San Francisco Public Health Department. My kids has been without being able to have education for the whole month. This is against human rights. I feel discriminated. You guys are attempting the right of education to my kid and both of them. And this is honestly against human rights. Yo soy latina y esto es discriminación completamente para la gente que no está vacunada.
Okay.
I feel really upset. I feel really frustrated.
We hear you, Ms. Flamenco. This public comment time is for the instructional coherence item on the agenda.
Yeah, that's why I'm talking, because you guys are talking about every child should learn every day. Every day. My kid is not learning for the whole month. I'm just making a point here. So stop discrimination. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mary?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Mary Travis Allen. I'm the advisory board president for the American Indian Cultural District. I will be speaking on the other item in the agenda. But for this coherent learning, it's essential, you know, it's interrelated programs to support and challenge the students, but it also challenges the teachers to have their knowledge of the students. And so that's where I have a concern, because we struggle in our community about equity and cultural sensitivity to our students and families. So in developing this, I hope that you outreach to the Indian Ed program and community members so that you can develop something that is truly interrelated, but that the families can understand it, so the students can understand it, because putting it in place to have challenges, we don't want to create an atmosphere that's going to further silence them, that they get intimidated by. So that's my commentary. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. I think
no
that's
other
all.
hands.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, commissioners, do you have any comments or questions? Okay, Commissioner Alexander.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Ford Marthel, Ms. Krugman, and Dr. Priestley, I know has been really involved in this work as well. It's really exciting and I think really important work for our district. I have two follow-up questions, which I'm sure that you've thought about. So this is more just kind of interested in kind of going a little bit deeper. But I just want to say I also just appreciated the sort of big picture overview we just got. That was very clear. So this is just kind of adding on to that. One would be, are there thoughts on specific instructional strategies that would be linked to those, to the rubrics? I thought that instructional rubric looked really good and interesting of trying to describe what ought to be happening in the classroom. And I'm thinking of efforts like, and I hesitate to say this, give this specific example because I have some problems with it, but Teach Like a Champion, for example, which is, I think, a little bit restrictive in how they approached it, but did kind of outline very specific instructional practices that then teachers could kind of mull over and think about. So if they have a situation where kids aren't, let's say, taking academic ownership, here's 4 or 5 strategies that a teacher might use to then address that in the classroom. Does that make sense?
Devin, you want to go?
Sure. The short answer is yes, we do intend to include that. I would say what we want to be specific is that they're developmentally appropriate. I think one of the struggles with some of those broader resources is it's the same strategy K-12, and I think we want to attend to the developmental needs of students at every level. But the idea, for example, is if we provided them for kindergarten, that they would be able to be used across content areas.
Yeah, thank you. That sounds awesome. That's exciting. And I totally agree. And I think they need to be really nuanced and flexible. I think that's the area where it needs to, but teachers then at least have access to them. The second question I had was around, and I think Deputy Superintendent Ford Marthel mentioned this, around sort of bright spots that already exist in our district. What's the thinking on how to kind of share those two? Because I know, both at the school level, but also at the classroom level, we have all these amazing examples of teachers that are doing this. Or schools that are doing many parts of it. What's our thinking on how we can begin to kind of have more cross-fertilization or kind of learning internally from those examples as we build this really important framework?
So again, one of the things we've been doing, or trying to pick up more traction on, is holding focus groups and talking to educators and showing them our deeper learning, framework and chunking up the graduate profile skills and getting their input and feedback. And from that, we hear a lot of educators, oh, and I do this and I do that, right? We're relying on our assistant superintendents and our principals as well to call out key practices, but in a more formalized way. We actually have professional learning communities. We have pilot groups who are piloting different components of our deeper learning framework, and we have a showcase, Commissioner Alexander, at the end of the year, where educators themselves, our classroom teachers, come and highlight and model and show artifacts from the work that they're doing in their classroom. So we didn't just say the stuff was happening. We actually know that it's happening because we're in the classroom, but we're also having these forums where folks can come and share. But what we know is that it's happening in pockets and in small spaces, and it's our job to figure out exactly what you just said, how to elevate those things and how to scale it and build the capacity. So we definitely want to use a model where we're leveraging opportunities for educators to share, but we want to start with a shared common understanding of what does good quality instruction look like, what do we mean by that graduate profile, and what are the components of a deeper learning classroom environment. I'm going to stand up. I'm sorry, Mark.
Oh, that makes sense because you're got the light shut off again. Well, I just want to finish this again by saying thank you to you, Dr. Ford-Marthel and Dr. Priestley, for your leadership on this. I mean, I feel like as someone who's been in SFUSD for over 20 years as a teacher and principal, I honestly have never seen this. And I was so excited when we did Vision 2025 almost 10 years ago now, in terms of creating this amazing vision at the big picture, right? And the graduate profile. As an educator, I was like, oh, finally, we're going to have this common path. But what we've always lacked is exactly what the work that you're doing right now, which is then taking that the next level down and saying, okay, what does that look like in classrooms at different grade levels in a way that, as you said, is coherent and is flexible enough that can be adapted to local conditions, but we actually know a lot of things about what good instruction looks like, as you've pointed out many times. And I think we needed that SFUSD way. And I think this is really, really critical work, and I think is a testament to your leadership. And I just want to say I'm really, really grateful. And if there's anything we can do as a board to continue to support it, please let us know.
Thank you, Commissioner Alexander. Any other comments or questions? I saw Commissioner Bogus' hand was up for a second. I don't know if you have any comments.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Sanchez. I was just curious if the kind of current fiscal outlook has any implications on, I guess, the rolling out and kind of the completion of this process, or anything that we need to know as a board to kind of ensure that we're on path to make sure this is kind of fully fulfilled.
Did you see, Commissioner Bogus, we all smiled. So yes, to be honest, right? Because there's a lot of work to be done. What Devin showed in terms of the website and the document and those rubrics takes a lot of time for teams to create. And so as we know, as we're thinking about really kind of reducing some of our teams, we are conscious that will necessarily mean that the work slows. We're committed that the work will not stop, but it definitely slows down as we have fewer folks to work on those things. You might not know, but for the curriculum and instruction team, it's kind of the same people working on all the different components. We talk about PD, we talk about coaching, we talk about the artifacts in the curriculum. It's that language arts team of 4 that's doing all 3 of those different components. So necessarily, yes, as we reduce our teams, it will definitely slow down the work. And so that's again why I showed that timeline. And I had the symbol of Post-its, because we know that as we learn more about our current constraints and our context, we might have to move things around and reprioritize, but continue to stay committed to moving towards coherence, as we said.
All right. Okay. Seeing no other comments, I'll just ask a couple of questions. One is, first of all, thank you for this work. I wasn't really aware of it, so this is a great presentation for me, very educational. Can you just talk a little bit more about, you talked a little bit about focus groups and how you're involving community and site-based folks in this process. Can you just tell us more what that looks like?
Yeah, so the first thing that we said we needed to do as we started to do this work, one of you all mentioned, I think it was Commissioner Alexander that talks about Vision 2025, and with that always comes the graduate profile. And folks would just say Vision 2025, but nobody knew what that meant and what was a part of it. And folks even say the graduate profile and are not clear what those things mean. So we've been really starting by getting clear and having a sense of shared language and understanding. And so what that's looked like is going to some PAC leaders, going to our superintendent fellows and asking first just questions around the need for coherence. And then secondly, asking about what do they know and understand about the graduate profile. There's actually an appointment, for lack of a better word, with our SAC leaders to have students respond. So we actually are bringing artifacts and saying, this is our graduate profile. This is what we think is essential about the graduate profile. What do you think? So that's what the engagement looks like at this point. Both asking folks, what does coherence mean to you? What will it look like? Do we need it? And then also asking folks to respond to some of the artifacts that we already have that will ultimately be the foundation for the rubrics and the curriculum that we develop going forward. And that's just the start. We definitely plan on engaging more folks and kind of doing what we're doing now, which is checking in periodically and saying, this is what we came up with. What do you think? Respond so that we can tweak it as we go.
Okay, thank you for that. On slide 10, it's the one about grade level guidance. And you mentioned kindergarten. Are we going to have a grade level guidance for TK as that rolls out to be universalized?
Yes, that came up. We did a presentation of this the other day, and our early ed folks was like, we don't start at kinder. We know that, but we started at kinder. And Nora Hausman had a really excellent example, or a reason why we did. I'm not going to say this eloquently as she did, but yes, we are definitely going to do TK. We're also going to start to move towards just more consistency and alignment for our pre-K babies as well. So we're definitely thinking PK through 12 when we talk about this alignment and coherence work. Great. And my last question is, you all know I'm a big fan about looking at other districts and their success or lack thereof. But so are other districts having success around instructional coherence that we could look to? And the Bright work, for example, we engaged in that, I think 10 years ago when I was a principal. I know about Commissioner Alexander, if you recall, but it didn't go very far. So I'm just wondering if there are other districts who have had some success around this kind of coherence that we're seeking. I'm going to say it. So we, at our superintendent fellows, there were a couple of different districts that came to share about their instructional framework, one of which was Long Beach. And so that is a strong example of a district who's getting some outcomes, particularly for our African-American students, where there is, quote unquote, a Long Beach way. And it was exciting for the fellows to hear that. And what we learned is that there was a great presentation, but it was hard for them to articulate what the Long Beach way was, because they've just been so, it's like, you know, the fish in the tank, right? It's just, and so we're really trying to replicate that, and we know that research says that districts that have a way are more successful, but we're trying to really document so that we can speak to what our way is and what are the different components. But there are a number of districts, Long Beach being one, and if you give me some time, I'll find the other one, that we've learned that says, like, yeah, when we do this, we get outcomes for students, because it's much easier to support a system where there's clarity and alignment than trying to support 20, 50 different models, right? So. Well, I look forward to having this item come back to this committee. So thank you very much for the presentation and involving us in this discussion. So we're gonna move on to, unless there's any last comments, we're gonna move on to the other informational item, which is resolution number 211-26A1, which was adopted a little over a year ago by this board in support of reclaiming the American Indian Alaskan Native narrative. So I don't know who's going to be presenting on this.
I'll get us started. So thank you. And while I have the floor and Commissioner Bogus is here, I haven't had the opportunity to just thank him for his leadership with the curriculum committee over the last year. So glad to have you with us, Commissioner Bogus, and thank you for all the work you've done towards meeting our goals in the curriculum committee. So yes, we have an informational item. Just recently, a few weeks ago, there was a presentation to the full board on the from the Indian Ed Pack, and there was reference to the this particular resolution, and there were many questions. I think all of them came up actually around curriculum. So at the request of commissioners, we wanted to take a deeper dive into our efforts around the work that has been done in curriculum and instruction on the Native American Indian resolution. And so this does not include all aspects of the resolution. We know there are other components, much like other resolutions that we have presented on. There's a lot of content, often around the curricular side. So we're going to name this as really part one of a part two series, where hopefully we can engage our other departments on the other aspects and components of the resolution later this year. So with that thought in mind, I am going to turn it over to the CNI team, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves as they take on their role in sharing. And we're going to start with Helen Pettiford. So Helen, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Priestley, and so good to see everyone today. Commissioners, good evening. And public, I know you're here with us too, so good evening. What we want to review today is the work that we've been able to make progress in regarding, well, specifically to curriculum and instruction, as Dr. Priestley noted. And these are the things that we'll be discussing and sharing with today: how we're engaging the Parent Advisory Council in review and approval of materials prior to rolling them out in implementation with teachers and schools, the prioritization and protection of funding of staff that is specific serving in the American Indian Education Program, the removal of curriculum and instruction materials containing stereotypes and misinformation, also providing educators with resources, both curriculum, professional development that shares authentic American Indian history. And lastly here, support of American Indian, Alaska Natives, and other indigenous languages with the intent to certify and satisfy the A through G school requirements. So we'll hear from different people on these different pieces of the work, but let's move on. We want to share with you, and we're pretty excited about this, that we have made progress on hiring both our program coordinator, who started in August, and then our program manager, who started a few weeks ago. And it was outlined in the resolution that this was part of the prioritization and protection of the program and all it needs, including these 2 staff positions. And you can see the subtotal, that's salary and benefits. So we'll move on. And in terms of identifying American Indian, Alaska Native students and families in order to connect them to our services that are offered, we went through a process with this, and I'll just tell a little bit about that and then maybe recommend another step. So firstly, we downloaded the data from our data systems of self-reporting Native American students or parents reporting that they're Native American. So we got that data and then we looked at it and there was a lot of information there. So what we had to do, because we're a small team here, you saw we hired 2 people, is that we really had to go through that data so that we could get ready to outreach to identify students. So part of that process is that once we have the data, then we outreach to families and we ask them to complete this federal form. It's called the 506 form. That's an identification form. And what we've been working really hard on this, and we have probably about 3 or 4 people working on this. We hired another person to help us on a contract. And what we have so far, it says 80 identified students. We know there are many, many more, but there's some, we have some systems issues here in terms of being more proactive. And that's what I'll go into in a moment. But I just checked with our program team and I understand there are over 100 506 forms at this point. And we actually got a report and worked on it from the data systems that had over 700 students. So you see how much more work we need to do here. It's important for us because we apply for a grant at the federal government level, which is directly proportioned to the number of students. So this is why it's really important for us to work out a system. The recommendation from our side is that the Department of Technology and the Enrollment Placement Center would be a place where upon enrollment, students and families who self-report being American Indian would then be offered the 506 form, that be completed and sent to us. That cuts down our time of our staff having to process all this data, but also we have been in communication with a partner over at the Department of Technology who's working on inserting this kind of field into the digital enrollment form. And we're not there yet, but that is something that we're working on. We're pretty excited about it, because if indeed we can identify, up to that number of families, 700 plus, then that would mean more funding for us, more services that we could offer to the students and families. Next slide. All right, college and career readiness. I believe we're going over. Yeah, Jen Fong. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pettiford. Jen Fong, Executive Director of College and Career Readiness. As regarding the resolution that SFUSD formally recognize and respect the cultural practices of American Indian and Alaskan Native peoples, we have 2 bullets to describe some of the work that we do. So first of all, College and Career Readiness works with the core regular staff, such as teachers and counselors, to provide professional development that meets the cultural needs of students. In the second bullet, the larger part of College and Career Readiness uses our grant funding to create additional opportunities for enrichment, and that includes American Indian students who participate in experiences such as high school credit recovery, dual enrollment at City College, career internships, AVID, and CTE pathways. We also work on college access, and we provide college ambassadors at these schools to help with the filling out of financial aid and the DREAM Act, as well as helping students to matriculate to City College as well as other colleges. So those are just some examples of how we are supporting students in making sure that we meet the needs of American Indian students. On the next slide, I'll start the slide and then pass it over to Director Devin Krugman. So in terms of ensuring that Indigenous languages are able to satisfy the California State A to G high school language graduation requirement, as of right now, there are not any Indigenous languages that satisfy the E requirement. The SFUSD graduation requirement is 2 years or 20 credits of a world language in the same language. And the UC requirement's also 2 years, and the recommendation is 3 years or 30 credits. So on that, I'm going to pass it over to Devin.
Hi, thank you for the introduction, Jen. But one of the things I wanted to highlight within this is that based on the requirements of teacher credentialing in the state of California and the UC's A to G requirements, we do have some restrictions on the courses that we can offer without having the credentialed staff. And so in terms, part one, in terms of exploring those avenues, we are still trying to figure out where there might be some leniency or where we might be able to access different teacher credentials or different structures for A to G requirements in order to meet this desire. But the one thing that we did actually really want to highlight and that we want to be able to do a better job sharing with families and community members is this piece around the final bullet, which are ways in which students and families can support their students in satisfying this language requirement using specifically the principal's waiver. And with this principal's waiver, that requirement for, as said on the form, LOTE, languages other than English, can be satisfied in a number of ways outside of the A to G system. And so, for example, a principal can waive that graduation requirement for a student in consult with cultural, professional, or community-based organizations who have a connection to maintaining language proficiency. And so a family can go to a school and request that waiver and work with their principal to have that language requirement waived for their student in the absence of a course offered in A to G. That waiver can also be used if the student has taken coursework in terms of college credits or with an outside organization. And so while we don't provide it internally, we do want to highlight that waiver, which is currently in place as we explore some of these other avenues related to A to G course offerings. And I am going to go ahead, if we can go to the next slide. And for curriculum and instruction, pass it off to our supervisors of both secondary ELA and history social studies to update on some of the curriculum and instruction items.
Thanks, Devin. Hi, I'm Susie DeBloy. I supervise secondary English language arts. I put on my uniform once I saw what was happening with the commissioners and their SFUSD swag, so noted. So this part of the resolution asks the district to engage the participation of the American Indian Parent Advisory Council for review and approval of all materials, proposals, and discussions that affect SFUSD, American Indian, and Alaskan Native students. An important stipulation to this part of the resolution is that this work be done prior to any implementation. And so currently in CNI, there are two content areas that in particular that have been making progress in this area. I will speak to the English language arts work, and Freedom Siam will cover the history social studies team's progress. So the ELA team has been working with the PAC and Indian Ed program staff to approve new instructional materials, particularly the core and supplemental texts that are featured on the district's recommended reading list. And that's for middle grades and high school. Our team is also designing sample units for the new 9th grade English class, which will be complementary to the ethnic studies class that 9th graders will take once the new graduation requirement is implemented to scale. So that unit we're really excited about. It's centered around a dystopian novel called Marrow Thieves by Cherie DeMilline. And it features a focus on the history of boarding schools in North America. And so our team has been meeting with the PAC since the fall to preview the unit before we started writing it. And we will be returning again soon, now that the first draft has been completed, to share the work and to get more feedback. Our guiding principle for this work has been that of that nothing about us without us. And our conversations that we've had with PAC members and program staff have been essential in guiding the work. We're extremely grateful for the time they've given us and continue to give. Freedom.
Thanks, Susie. Commissioner Sanchez, just a note, I had that same hoodie on earlier today that I get dressed up for the occasion. Commissioner Alexander, Bogus, and Lopez, thank you for the opportunity. So just continuing on that slide, so as new instructional materials are considered for adoption in history and social science, we will ask the PAC to review, advise, and approve any of those materials, and we have not yet done so, but two points I wanted to identify is that number one, we have established regular meetings with Indian Ed between Helen, Jason, and Audrey twice a month to ensure constant communication in the development of our curriculum work, as well as we have attended PAC meetings to continue to develop the trust and rapport with the PAC team. And we have scheduled in March the presentation of our history and social science, a document that we're calling our vision, values, and principles, which are the basic principles guiding our curriculum development work in social science and history and ethnic studies. Next slide, please. Oops, I'm looking at my slides. And so the additional component from the resolution, so before the end of 2021-22 school year, the district shall remove stereotypes and misinformation about American Indian, Alaskan Native, and all indigenous peoples from school walls, celebrations, and textbooks, including the current United States history textbooks, which contain Native American references to Pocahontas as a willing and curious prisoner and banishing Native American tropes. So to this point, the history social science team is currently combing through the K-5 text, as well as the 6-12 textbooks, flagging content, imagery, artwork that would violate this resolution. And we're using the Vocals framework, a framework designed by Dr. Michael Hines from Stanford and used as a resource for conversations between educators, scholars, administrators, and other stakeholders around evaluating K-12 social studies adoption of materials and examining the use of
voice, opportunities for historical thinking, criticality, agency, and locality or vocals. And then the history and social science team is also working to create a comprehensive PK-12 history social science plan, including the adoption of a new text and or writing of a new curriculum. And to respond to Commissioner Bogus's inquiry earlier, that our financial situation will determine, I think, if we will adopt and adapt versus the writing of our curriculum. I'll pass it back to Susie, and I think I'll close out.
Thanks, Free. So as Frida mentioned, this component of the resolution really focuses on the removal of instructional materials which contain stereotypes and misinformation. So we're going through the English language arts recommended reading lists, and we're using guidance from the American Indians and Children's Literature Organization. They're a group that provides critical analysis of Indigenous peoples in children's and young adult books. It's run by Dr. Debbie Reese, who's someone we're also working on getting a contract with so that she can help us specifically with the work we're doing in San Francisco Unified. In the meantime, we've identified a list of several titles that we suggest be removed in alignment with Dr. Reese's scholarly work, as well as the blog on which she publishes hundreds of reviews of texts. And so we have shared those titles that are suggested for removal from the middle grades list with the PAC. And we'll actually be voting on their removal at the next PAC meeting on March 3rd. Then we're going to move on to looking at the high school list and moving through that same progress in April and May. Next slide, please. Back to Free.
Thank you. In regards to the resolution that states that we provide educators with curriculum resources to teach true Native American history, our team, the History Social Science team, worked closely with Helen and Jason from Indian Ed in the development of the American Indian Resource Guide this past fall, which is linked there. Also in partnership with Indian Ed and the Parent Advisory Council, we enlisted 2 teachers to develop a 4th grade social studies unit, beginning with the Ohlone culture and history, as we know that the California state curriculum begins with California missions in the 4th grade. And that is linked there, that unit. And then lastly, our team is contracting the California Indian Museum and Cultural Center to deliver a cultural intelligence professional development to 4th grade teachers on a Saturday in May, in tandem with the delivery of this new 4th grade unit. I mean, I just wanted to footnote that it is happening on a Friday because in-service sub days, we're unable to do in-service sub days due to our substitute shortage. But I think that is it on behalf of our team of PGD and CDI, and thank you for listening, and I'll maybe pass it back to Director Krugman or Dr. Priestley.
I'll turn it over to Commissioner Sanchez for questions.
Thank you so much, team. I'm very happy with this. Deborah, can we see if there's any public comment?
If you would like to speak to this item, can you please raise your hand? Can I have that translated, please?
¿Quieren hacer algún comentario relacionado con este tema? Por favor, levante la mano. Gracias.
Thank you.
Seeing one hand, Commissioner.
All right, it's Mary again. Hi, Mary. I'll give you 2 minutes.
Mary? Mary?
Hold on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Okay. Technology, isn't it fun? Anyway, so basically what I want to say is thank you for the work that's been done. We've had some good conversations at Indian Ed to address some of the curriculum concerns, but obviously there are 19 items on this resolution. And our experience, we've done annual presentations for decades. I've been involved with Indian Ed through my kids and my grandkids. So that kind of puts a framework of many decades. And I've seen many things asked for and no progress made. So the resolution to us is a promise, a treaty with us, if you will, not just idle words to be picked apart and, you know, for us not to see action on these items. I do want to comment on what Ms. Fong offered about the college and readiness program. Our students in high school do not get information about Indian colleges and scholarships and grants. And so a lot of that information is generalized, but we need some specifics. There's other items in there about cultural sensitivity. You know, we asked, I understand the A through G thing is going to be a fight, an adventure, if you will, but also about, you know, science and cultural sensitivity there for our students. And like I mentioned earlier, you know, the teachers need education. EPC, you know, a few years ago, corrected the 506 forms, and then it fell right back into being a misaligned process. So, and that Indian Ed had to clean the data to identify the students. And so, you know, just look at the numbers. If there are 755 self-identified, where are they? So there's something wrong in the data, and there's something wrong in the process. Thank you.
Thank you,
Paloma.
Mary.
Hello there, greetings, everyone. Paloma Flores speaking as a community member, as a former colleague, as the former director of the Indian Education Program. Chumi Samwe, I want to thank you all for the presentation provided, really focusing on what's important, our students, our young people. I want to commend the work that's been done by hiring 2 full-time employees to support the program and the 700 plus students. But I do want to express that's not enough. It's not enough. To support our students is to truly invest in them. Earlier tonight, I heard about the Vision 2025, and I will be focusing on that. The graduate profile for many of our students is something that has yet to be realized. It has yet to be made real for their future. If we're talking about supporting students, we also need to support the curriculum and what's being taught for us, by us, for all. American Indian education is education for all. So I'd like to just express my concern with how much work's been done up to this point in the school year, and to urge all of you to put urgency around realizing all 19 points of this resolution, because it's our students, it's our future that we are most in concern of. Thank you all. I also lastly want to support the comments made by Mary. Thank you.
Thank you, Paloma. It's good to have you with
That's
us.
it, Commissioner.
Thank you, Deborah. Commissioners, any questions or comments? Okay, I don't see any. I do want to just address part of it. The comment was about the 19 essentially promises that the board has committed itself to. Some of them don't fall under the bailiwick of the curriculum committee. So there's one that's around removing or putting markers in all of our buildings, including at 555, acknowledging this is unceded territory, and that would go to buildings and grounds, for example. So we're trying to cover everything that has to do with curriculum and instruction right now in this format. So I do want to thank staff for the work that you've done thus far. I know that it's been hobbled somewhat due to the pandemic and due to the sub shortage and resources. So to me, it's a good start. We have a lot more to do, obviously, and we need to bring this back to this committee for updates as we move along. Does anybody else want to add anything before we move on? Dr. Priestley?
Thank you, Commissioner Sanchez. I do want to note, although the other items that are in the resolution may not fall within the curricular realm, we do want to respond to all aspects of the resolution. So I want to offer that in some way, shape, form, or fashion, whether it's in this venue or another one, that we're able to provide an update. So I think that is appropriate in some ways, and I'm sure you and I can work through that. I want to make sure we've worked very closely in CNI with the Indian Ed Pack. They've been very strong collaborators with us, and so we really appreciate all of their input and their advice and all of the time they give us at their various meetings. So I just want to note, this is really one of those relationships that has really guided our work, and I think has made it stronger. So we want to commit to doing that in the future. I also just want to, I think it's noted, we have I believe about 5 members of the team here from CNI. I really appreciate how much the team has really invested in this work. It's a high priority for us, as noted, and why we see the progress that we do see, but we also know we need to do much more. And so just want to echo the sentiment of, yes, we have made some strides, but it doesn't always manifest itself in the results. We know we want to see stronger academic results for our students, more opportunities, a higher graduation rate, more opportunities for college. So we know we have a road, and so I just want to acknowledge that, but also just want to acknowledge the investment of the team and how much they've gotten, have put in themselves in this. And so I just want to name that. And also I just want to appreciate the support from the board. The board has really been invested in putting together this resolution, and just in all of the asks. We've always had very positive responses and a lot of positive support. So just want to thank the board for their continued support for our Native American students. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dr. Priestley. Helen, did you want to?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Priestley. On that note, it reminded me that I did want to announce that we have hired our program manager, Adri, and Adri is here listening in as a public, in the public link. And Adri will be the person who helps us line up and work with other teams within the district on all of the other items. So we're really excited about that. Adri's already started a big plan, program sort of management plan to do this work. So we're excited to work with Dr. Priestley again, and to reach out to the other chiefs and like that. But then from that point on, probably maybe Jill Hugendijk can help us with this too, to outreach to the other teams. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you for that. If there are no other comments or questions, first of all, thank you, Helen, Susie, Devin, Jen, Freedom. Am I missing anybody? Adri, for your work, continued efforts on this really big and important topic for us in this district. So with that, a special Valentine's Day Curriculum Committee meeting is coming to an end. Thank you, everybody, for being with us, and we'll see you later. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.